The biggest names in technology descended on Capitol Hill today to talk all about regulating artificial intelligence. But it is what came after the doors closed that's making the biggest headlines. It always does. When one senator tells NBC News that Elon Musk privately warned that AI poses a, quote, civilizational risk to our societies. So let's bring in the San Francisco treat himself, Jake Ward, NBC News tech correspondent and author of the book, The Loop, How Technology is Creating a World Without Choices and How to Fight Back. All right, Jake, what did we learn today?
You know, I think we learned that the talking points of big tech CEOs, and I mean, this was as big a group as you could imagine, right? I mean, Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates in one room, right? All of those people, I think, have really locked down what they like to talk about when they talk to senators about this kind of thing. They like to talk about things like Elon Musk talking about this big civilizational risk. As one person put it to me, that's a way of sort of shaping the conversation toward the kinds of risks that they are comfortable talking about and away from the more short-term problems that we're seeing. And that is something that supposedly did not really get touched as much this time. And, well, I could go on and on, but there's a lot around the way one person put it to me is, when you're thinking about AI regulation, you got to think in years, maybe even generations. But tech CEOs think in financial quarters. They want to move fast and make money now. And I think what we saw coming out of this was more and more senators taking that line and talking about, oh, we have to move fast in order to not get in the way.
But also, let's talk about who's in the room.
Right.
The biggest stakeholders, the people who stand to make the most amount of money, are telling the lawmakers,
that's right,
here's how to regulate us. I mean, that is like my kids saying, okay, mom and dad, here is how much you're going to pay me in allowance. Here's all the rules you're going to give me. And what, the senator sat there with a pen and paper and said, thank you, sir, we'll do that tomorrow. That's bonkers to me.
It is bonkers. I mean, I spoke to the lone academic. There was just one invited to this thing. Deb Raji was her name. She's from UC Berkeley, and it was her job to represent basically all of academia in the face of a combined, $1 trillion worth of tech CEO in there. And I asked her, what is it like to square off with these folks, to say to them, well, what about, the way marginalized groups are having their SNAP benefits denied by automated systems that your companies are helping to build? And she said, well, I tried to do my best. I tried to say we shouldn't be worried about the Terminator quality of the stuff that Elon Musk wants to talk about. She didn't name names, but that's the sort of vibe I got. But, and instead, she wanted to talk about like how the way these things are built and being deployed right now is having a specific and distinct effect on especially marginalized communities. She said this was a hard room to get that across in. And she said, I've been studying everybody's talking points. I was sort of ready for it, but it was really hard to get that across. The lone academic, just one.
I'd love to know if Deb was in D.C. last night, because I am sure the lobbyists for all these big companies were taking out these lawmakers, their staff, all over town to big, fat, fancy, expensive dinners. I'm guessing Deb wasn't there.
Well, and the thing, too, right, that these guys are so good at, and that is it become increasingly part of the playbook of tech CEOs, is to show off how cool the tech is at the front end. You'll remember that a couple of months ago, they had a gathering where Sam Altman came to town. He was going to testify before Congress. But before he had a big dinner that all the senators got to come to. And even Ted Lieu, who has been a really vocal
I'm guessing everybody didn't pay their own way.
I don't know whether they paid. I don't know who paid. I don't know who paid. Maybe that's right. But they definitely got this show that supposedly blew their minds. And even Ted Lieu came out saying, wow, that was really amazing, And what all the academics and critics that I've been speaking to in the since this thing has happened said is, if you do that on the front end, you absolutely bias people away from thinking about, wow, what happens when we're at a place like we are right now where we don't have a good, reliable system for telling the difference between what's written by AI and what's written by humans. Right now, there's no system for that. On the eve of 2024.
This is coming, a day or two after Vladimir Putin just weighed in on Donald Trump and these investigations. It's political persecution.
All of that is happening right now, and yet what they want to talk about is how we're going to get enslaved by robots in the future, but you can trust us to sort of deal with it. This is the crazy thing.
What about the talk of creating an agency to regulate AI?
So I mean, most of the people that I'm talking to are very much in favor of that concept. What they say is that if that agency only takes as its metric of harm money and the money that can be made and balancing that against everything else, then you're gonna sort of wind up in a lot of trouble. We have to basically redefine our idea of what harm really even involves in order to get there. You're hearing all these tech CEOs say, we would like that to be the case, but you have to remember, it's part of the playbook of those companies to also try and set up rules that only they can satisfy. We've seen this before.
It's called regulatory capture. When the biggest guys say, yep, I know how to game the system. Let me pick the regulations, and I'm going to know how to work around them.